So this afternoon, it is such a pleasure for me to introduce a multidisciplinary artist by the name of Rachel Martin. Rachel's work often explores tribal identity, intersectional feminism, and Indigenous sovereignty. She's an enrolled Tlingit, which means she's a recognized member of the Tlingit tribe. The Tlingit are Indigenous peoples whose ancestral homelands appear on most contemporary maps as Southeast Alaska. And their homelands are sometimes also identified as being in the Pacific Northwest. She's also, I was really interested to learn, a student of the Tlingit language. She's had solo exhibitions this past fall at Hannah Traoré Gallery in the Lower East Side, Nina Johnson Gallery, terrific gallery in Miami, Florida, Timothy Hawkinson Gallery in Los Angeles, and Macaulay and Company Fine Art in Vancouver, Canada. And she's been in group shows at Forge Project up in the Hudson Valley, where she was also a fellow, Anchorage Museum in Anchorage, Alaska, the Brooklyn Museum, the Hessel Museum of Art at Bard College in Annandale on Hudson, also in the Hudson Valley, Idlewild Arts Gallery in Idlewild, California, New Release Gallery here in New York, and MoCA Tucson in Arizona. Her work has been reviewed in Hyperallergic, The Observer, Four Columns, and Art News. And her work is in several collections, including the Morgan Library, the Brooklyn Museum, the Mary Louise Hessel Collection, Anchorage Museum, the Forge Collection, and the Gotchman Family Collection, where she is also a curator and advisor curator. And yeah, it's really great that she's sharing her time with us this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming Rachel Martin.
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna introduce myself in my traditional language. Rachel Martin, Duchat Dusak, Shinget Ayachat, Sha'ach Nachat City, Tagmidi Ayachat, Shahid Ayachat. So first off, I want to thank you all for being here. It's especially amazing to look upon actual faces as opposed to Zoom. My name is Rachel Martin. I am a Tlingit artist. I belong to the Sagmidi clan, which is a killer whale clan of the Eagle moiety. My family lineage from my late father's side is from Southeast Alaska. And on my mother's side, we are from Southern California. Can you get Yucatandi, Shu Altu? So I am a Tlingit language learner. And this is especially important for me to introduce myself in my native language when I'm entering art spaces that I'm invited into. I consider myself a student, so it's a special honor to be here with a bunch of other students. I've lived in New York for almost 18 years, which I consider myself a guest on Lenape-Hoking, which are the stolen homelands of the Lenape nations. My art studio is located in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and I'm also a co-curator and a consultant for a mostly private lending collection called the Gotchman Collection, which is exhibited in several locations, but mostly based here in the city. So I'm going to start here with this work, because this is a really good interpretation of what's known as Northwest Coast Formline. But this is going to be in my own voice with the Pink Association behind it, which is usually with femininity, and it is kind of in a way to look at it in a different way. This is a form line that's in an active motion with like joyful energy, And this is also in the form of an abstracted eagle. As I mentioned, I'm of the eagle moiety, so a lot of my work is gonna have that imagery in it. And I'll explain that later as well. So Formland is basically thousands of years old. At least this specific one is dated 8,000 years old. But the term formline is fairly young and was first used by Bill Holm in 1965 to describe the primary distinguishing forms of this design, which this is specifically known as an ovoid. And there's two primary ideas behind formline, which are ovoids and a split U. So let's see, yeah, ovoid is gonna be known mostly as the mother of formline, so you see that it's this ovoid shape and everything else kind of works around it. Formline is one of these things that you can't really define that easily, and I'm asked to do that constantly. It's a living history, basically, so there's not a strong definition about what is exactly formline. I can kind of just show you examples of it, and tell you that the beginnings of it start with ovoid and U-form. So basically, again, bringing up the fact that you can see the ovoid in the center with the hand, and then U-forms working around it. This is really to like form a harmony, a visual balance, and the idea of it is really to invoke this balance of design at all times and not have anything there that's excessive. Or it should have a function at all times. This form of design is meant to tell stories or abstract animals or invoke historic events. So formline is really beyond just an art form, it's a living history, it's the same as our language or our food or our water. So it sounds pretty vague, and that's because it kind of is. A lot of abstraction is usually credited to the Western art world, when the reality of abstraction has existed for thousands of years in indigenous cultures around the world, including African and definitely within the indigenous world. So it's kind of neat to be able to use the word abstraction and change that around. Many, definitely not all formline designs depict crests that belong to a specific clan. So as a responsible artist, I have to take the effort to be culturally informed and fluent about distinguishing what is and isn't appropriate for me to use within the formline languages. Basically, it's not a free-for-all for me to use whatever I want. If I'm making a work with imagery from the opposite clan, I need to get specific permission from that clan, which sounds involved, and it kind of is, but we're a small enough nation that we can really ask tribes pretty easily. I think there's about 20,000 Playkits in Southeast Alaska, so we all have pretty intricate land leaders around. So the fundamental principle around formline is really to honor the idea that there's a spirit in everything. So when I'm working with imagery that is along the formline world, it's kind of a communication with the non-physical world. So I have to take it pretty seriously, even though I'm working with playful imagery. One of the things I'm trying to do as an artist is to figure out how to create something that captures the spirit of something and make it feel accessible, as opposed to scary, which is a concept in the Western world of being kind of scared of ghosts or spiritual beings. I really love the idea of communicating with spiritual beings and ancestors through the use of art, and also just making it feel like it's breaking it down to be something that's the human world and the non-human world should really interact together and feel like comfortable. So specifically in this one, I visit traditional foodways and indigenous sovereignty in lots of ways. This one is going to convey fish as a form of indigenous sovereignty and communal wealth. When you see me holding fish in some sort of way, or you see my imagery holding fish, it's usually an allusion to indigenous sovereignty, because fish is really this idea of, like, instead of having dollar bills or like a stack of dollar bills, you're holding like fish. So you can see that all over the work. And that's like, instead of like having those, these are right now, those are salmon jars, which you'll see in my work quite a bit as well. There's a lot of work that goes into providing that kind of food to our people, and food means freedom, which I think while we're looking at what's happening, that was happening in Palestine, that access to healthy food is incredibly important to people in terms of survival, but also holding joy. And this is an actual piece of salmon that was gifted to me, but this color scheme is all over my work. So you're gonna see pinks and oranges and all of those kinds of beautiful colors, and you don't see that in traditional form line. Like Northwest Coast art has some primary colors, which are black, white, yellow, red. So I really want to represent the colors pink that I see so often when I'm visiting home. So yeah, you'll see pink there a lot of the times, but it's not in that like Barbie plasticky way. It's in that like mushy, gooey, gutsy way. So this work is also going to be celebrating matriarchal contributions to the community, but in a really playful way that's not so heavy. She's got that ovoid head that you would have seen in one of the first slides. That ovoid head is going to be in all of my work. This is honoring ancestors in the past, but also carrying that forward in the future. She's just got a fresh manicure, so I feel like it's the same as having that emoji with the manicure, but like this is the indigenized version of that. And it's mostly like just really fun. The idea of it is really to like make people feel like they're invited to an understanding and inviting to a humor that we have. And that's really going between generations as well, like the younger generation and also our older generation that will see that this work and be really like, oh, that's exactly what I know what that is. So there's this bridge between generations when it comes to doing this lighthearted work that's super important, making it accessible and feeling like it's representing a natural a living history of things that are happening right now, but in the vehicle of a really older imagery that we have. Instead of, so her muscles in this one, as opposed to salmon jars, are like lactating breasts. And that's really one of my favorite things, because a lot of people know in Northwest Coast art, it's kind of dominated by the males of art, and that's actually all of art in general, but so you just don't see breasts in Northwest Coast art or formally that often. And I'm gonna maneuver as much as I can to make sure that women are represented in our art that's modern. So yeah, this is also a similar idea of salmon wealth being super important in indigenous sovereignty with the salmon jerky. A lot of people don't know that that is salmon jerky. There's something after that. But yeah, you'll see eye forms on her head. That's also in something that is traditional when it comes to alluding to intuition. You'll see eye forms all over my work as well. And you'll see here that she's got sharpened nails, which is usually a sign for me that there's a protectiveness about this work. In a way, I use nails quite a bit. Sometimes they're rounded when they're talking, when they're interacting with their family or something where there's softness involved. If you see sharpened nails in my work, it's usually for some sort of protectiveness. In this case, it's gonna be protection of food sovereignty and also of the sexualized patriarchal gaze, which is usually associated with seeing breasts or someone topless somehow. Especially, and this will like go right back again, she doesn't have a top on, the boobs are kind of out of whack in a way, and this is also something that's like important to me because in the summertime, you know, before contact, you would just walk around without a top and it would be completely fine and there'd be no sexualized idea behind it. So having that idea and looking at nudity outside of the sexualized gaze is super important to me all the time. And then that is piece of salmon jerky, which is very yummy in general. All right, so then another playful way that I'm going to work around pinks, as I was mentioning, or is gonna be when it comes to something, these are specifically steel guts, and I will show you a real life photo after that. But yeah, there's, with this, it's like the idea of putting out femininity in this color of pink, and especially Barbie pink, is something that I love to play around with and make you look at pink in a different way and kind of see guts and like mushy things that are super beautiful, and including the vulnerability of learning about something new that you don't know. A lot of people, I've only learned about steel gut breathing in the last few years. I wasn't born with this idea of knowing indigenous imagery, and the idea of welcoming a younger group of people that don't know what is happening, and then just welcoming all people into things that they didn't know about before is super important. So it's really just the idea of like celebrating vulnerability of not knowing something and not knowing about something and being really like psyched on learning something new. So you can kind of see that there's like a youthful energy about something that's unknown. The reality is that most people, when they look at that, aren't gonna know what the heck that is. So it's neat for me to be able to come here and share with you. You're gonna walk out of here knowing what braided seal guts look like, so that's a win for me. So these are braided seal guts, and this imagery is really something that is incredibly inspirational to me, and it's also so beautiful in ways that I want to share. I don't want it just to be living in Alaska, because I think that it's really important for people to know how beautiful these traditions are, so that they're protected when it comes to climate justice and all of these kinds of things, because like these are beautiful traditions that are very sophisticated beyond what people associate with rural Alaska and the things that they do. So yeah, on the subject of pinks, this is essentially a canopy bed with drying meat and smoked fish. I had a fall solo show, as we were talking about before, with Hana Traore, and so I missed my summer trip to Juneau, which is like super important to me because I live in the city, which is really a harsh for the most part. And so I was having dreams about these kinds of imagery and delicious smoked fish. And I made this drawing, one, because I was sad, but also two, because I wanted to make that sadness become something that's joyful. And also it really does make me laugh because it's pretty funny. There's a really beautiful spiritual energy that's surrounding dreams, and dreams are incredibly important, not just to the indigenous world, but also to everyone. And you should really pay attention to your dreams and honor those in the ways that you have. So that was like, it's funny, but it's also heavy in a sort of way. You'll see that her arms and her legs have what looks like a tattoo. That's definitely not a tattoo, but those are black form line markings. And I guess my dad told me when I was that I'm basically gonna be Tlingit in every single lifetime, so just be used to being Tlingit. And so the idea is that your foundation is, you know, form line, and Tlingit foundations and traditions are just a part of your body. And then you're wearing these Western clothes that are like cute and everything, but a lot of the times I'll depict the fact that your bones or your blood or your body they have all of these sort of stories. They're all of that history, all of that dark history is held in your body, but you know, outside of it, you still continue to things. Yeah, this is meat curtains, like drying fish. So yeah, I'm just making sure that everyone knows that's a dream. This kind of thing doesn't happen. Nobody sleeps with a canopy of dried meat over their beds ever. This is really just a dream world, and I think that's really exciting. Yeah, and this is the reality of that. That's smoked fish. This is all done in a smoker. It's a really amazing smell, but you can see where the references come from. And yes, and this is the same beautiful colors of blue, I mean, blue and pink and wood. And there's just an amazing amount of simplicity, but it's incredibly intricate and complex on how to get all of this. There's thousands of years of cultural knowledge involved in making this kind of food available to us. And it's the same as for thousands of years. We have this amazing relationship with these fish that is not that simple. It's very complex, but it also can be so simple too, which is kind of amazing when I think about it. But all of this stuff is making me super hungry. So I'm gonna change the subject and go to this work. She's a 10, but she boils herring eggs until they're all white and rubbery, which is gonna be pretty funny in a lot of ways, because most people won't know what that means. There's definite ways that you are going to, but herring eggs are central to what a lot of my stories are. And so this is gonna be like the goal of art is to make it so that you're hitting all the audiences and you're not like excluding anyone specifically, but it's very important to me for my community to see my work and know that it's theirs, because this work doesn't belong to me. This is thousands of years old. So it's important for me to have my community see that work and be like, that's us. And I'm so psyched. And then also share it with people outside of our community and like celebrate how beautiful that is. And I love all work that does that. But so this specific work is depicting a Chilkat blanket, which is a beading system that is finger twined technique that requires immense amount of skill, time, dedication. A single Chilkat robe can take years to weave, and the knowledge of how to complete them has always been held by a very small amount of weavers. I think there's about 15 in the world. So carrying on the traditions of Chilkat is also really important, which is a goal for me to bring this kind of imagery to our younger generation and make them understand how important this is, and also how much it is a part of us. These weavings are important historically, but also, yeah, going forward. The Chilkat robes are traditionally worn by clan leaders, which are historically men. So, and also for ceremonial gatherings and civic gatherings, if an item is repatriated, then the village will have their clan leaders dance to welcome back a repatriated item. And so this is really important when it comes to just having this work be known as a relative, in a certain way. In this drawing, the person is not gendered in any sort of way, and that's intentional on my part. They're wearing a robe in a very untraditional way. I'm gonna show a slide next of how it's properly worn. This was a lesson to me. When I make these drawings, I don't actually have an idea of what I want to do. I really am presented with an image, and I have to just accept it. I would have loved something that's super regal and strong. This one the arms it's showing off this Chilkat blanket, and in the And the way that it's showing it off, it's not using its arms, like it's just by trying to show off it's limiting the mobility that it has. So it's kind of, it was a lesson for me when it comes to like flexing. Basically. You might recognize this from an earlier black and white, you probably don't. But this is really just one of the first form line figures I made. This in reference to one of the first form line figures I made. And it's just inserting my actual experience, my living experience into a Chilkat robe. And it could be controversial in a certain way because Chilkat robes are specific to clan information. And I'm just learning about my clan information and I want our younger generation to know that it's okay if you don't know. And you're just learning about it. So it's also kind of just like a green flag for not knowing and also just, it's more important to kind of do it as opposed to like start making it feel accessible and living to you as opposed to doing it perfectly and according to tradition. Because also bending tradition to what is around your lived experience is super important. And yes, so this figure is also wearing Converse, which a lot of the times in this romanticized idea, you'd think they'd be wearing moccasins or something. And I don't want to pander to that. I really want to show that this is happening now. And that inviting the younger generation to wear these Chilkat robes, even in a way that's not completely comfortable. Just showing up is really the most important part. And I think I'll go back and show that when this person's wearing this Chilkat, it also just appears really heavy, which is the way that a lot of younger generations feel when it comes to carrying on traditions. And so it's not perfect and they're not wearing it that way because it feels really heavy. This is a Chilkat robe. Anytime I go back to Alaska, I'm usually going to go to the Alaska State Museums. It's a custom for us to visit our relatives that are locked up in these institutions. Definitely most of this work can be traced back to specific clans. So it's not just free floating and they're preserving it. A lot of the times things are cloaked in this idea of preservation when the idea of these is really to have a lifespan. They're supposed to have active joy and be in celebration with the rest of their family. So we'll go here and we'll visit and not with sadness, we're gonna laugh, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna point out all of these really beautiful things and make these works feel like, and tell them they're gonna come home one day. And this is what a Chilkat robe looks like on a confident human being. This is the work of Lily Hope. She is one of our most important Chilkat weavers. And she's dancing with the Between Worlds Chilkat robe. And this is a photo by Sydney Akagi, who's also a weaver in our community. So yeah, that's really the way that it should be looking. And so when you saw the original part of mine, like, oh. So yeah. This is a rare masculine figure that showed up in my work earlier on. This is honoring my late stepfather, who was an incredible fisherman and also a traditional net weaver. He would dance at ceremony in a Chilkat robe. And so I modernized this into a pair of fishing overalls and included the extra tough boots that you see there. Which is the national rubber boot of Alaska, basically. You guys won't know what that is, but people in Alaska see it immediately. It's the same idea as seeing Nikes for us, or like, oh. So he really appreciated that. And I was like, this is another masculine work that showed it up as well, but in fact, let me find this. A lot of the times I'm going to use colored paper in place of drawing a wave or something like that. I'm going to try to simplify my work as much as possible at all times. So this is the use of blue paper instead of water, to denote an ocean. In this case, this is a halibut, and it's got kind of a playful octopus on their belly. This is honoring traditional form line technique as a primary force, but also balancing it with this younger trickster energy. The tongue hanging out, or tongue sticking out, is often thought of as just being playful, but in our culture, it's really meant to be a passing of knowledge, and I think that works out in both ways. In a lot of ways, like if you see Cardi B, it's still something that I would look at as, you know, like, yes, she's passing along some sort of ancient knowledge. And so that's how I feel about it. So after I finished this drawing, I realized that this was my father that showed up without me realizing it, and it weirded me out for a little while, because I was like, oh, like it was definitely not on purpose. And that's my dad with the famous Martin resting face that is denoted in that. So I'm gonna move off of the masculine energy because there's like only those two kind of. Anyway. So yeah, I'm going back to the color pink, and this is more of just like making sure that not everything is super heavy for me that's talking about food sovereignty or oppression or anything like that. Like you want to keep things light and moving and everything. So this is also to speak to our younger generation. A lot of our masks that you'd see in the museums have this like kissing face, and it can mean lots of different things, but I like the idea of engaging with it by like blowing bubble gum or whistling or making some sort of funny sound, because that's just fun in a lot of ways. And I really like enjoy the idea of just making something that's older and feeling like it's a part of our stories too. So this is gonna be a more traditional form line mask. When you go to a museum, you see our masks, and we're well represented in museums all over the world. But you don't see that much of our work represented in contemporary spaces. So this is a way of me reclaiming that and also humanizing those masks that you see that are detached from the human being. So I'm gonna usually play around with that in a lot of ways. This one is a killer whale in a very specific form line, but with pastel colors and pointy nails. She looks a little bit disruptive or mischievous, and this is what's called trickster energy. And I really utilize trickster energy when it comes to changing things that I want to see as better or different somehow. So that's exciting to me. So a lot of my drawings, like the very first drawing that we saw, is a feminine energy in activity, in some sort of form of activity, because that's really what I want to see is this work living and breathing and enjoying life, which is the opposite of what you see in the museums. And so I'm gonna add this human body. This is specifically called Been Ready, which is really to say that, you know, we've been ready to go home for a while and it's time. This is also where you're seeing that she's running in athletic socks and no clothing, but the focus really shouldn't be so much on her nudity as it is on the ease that she has within herself. I think that's usually the thing that I find, like, there's an ease to have not necessarily having clothes on or wearing comfortable clothes. So I like the idea of just see things in like this different sort of way. She's sticking her tongue out, again, in a mischievous way, but also just in a way that you wanna, you know, she'd like to see things differently. On a separate note, this was really informed by my love for Florence Griffith Joyner, who's known as Flojo. If you don't know who she is, then I recommend Googling because she was really amazing. and I did a book report on her when I was a little kid. And it really influenced my work in terms of having like, you know, like pointy nails and an over the top personality. A lot of you won't know who Flojo is, but definitely look it up because it's a really important woman in our history. So yeah, this is gonna be celebrating a round face and a huge smile. That's uncomfortable. A lot of the times, like women are not meant to have like these huge smiles. When I laugh, I just like my whole body laughs, and a lot of the times you're not encouraged to do that. But I encourage loud and taking up space with your joy. She's got big hips and round breasts. And this one might have a little bit less of the same ease, but it's still, that's also really fine to acknowledge that. Self-esteem for not having like this perfect European body or face structure is something that I grew up without, thinking that their things should look a certain way. And so it's really important for me to show our future generation how like beautiful these non-European features are as well, like all features, not that like Europeans are bad, but it's just like, I want to, you know, celebrate lots of different things, so that was pretty important. Yeah, so you're gonna see thick thighs and this anti-energy comfort. This is somebody that's like maybe just taking up a lot of space and being comfortable with themselves, and it shouldn't be scary. And it shouldn't necessarily be sexy either. It should just be like whatever you see into it. But this is again having a collage mask on that body because I think a lot of the times that ancestral energy comes out, and just like I love that stuff. So this is an earlier work, but it's one of my favorites because again, it's like, it's kind of rich and sexy and super weird without trying to be any of those things. That this kind of energy should just be natural. I've always had a fascination with like sea creatures and weird things, and I've always been known as being just like a really weird person and having weird ideas, and I always thought that was bad. So this is just me as an adult being like celebrating all those things and encouraging people to be psyched on imperfections. This is what influenced that drawing. And I think the idea of you know, having a perfect shade of red lipstick and it's like actually blood is like really neat to me. So if I'm thinking of something that's like sexy, this would be like, ooh, wait, look at that. Like she's getting her own food and she's like, so yeah, it's a lot of the things that I'm influenced by are just natural and funny. And fun, like naturally funny. It's not this contrived idea of what things should be. So yeah. Cute. So yeah, this is called Keep It Simple, Silly. And yeah, this is all pretty simple. Basically, I'm also honoring the traditional ecological knowledge when it comes to using a tree and holding with your underwear. Like these are, you know, funny things, but also embracing that we would be able to, you know, problem solve in nature somehow and stuff like that. It's kind of funny. A lot of the times my titles are going to be where I have fun and set a tone. I usually don't title something until after it's done because I don't always know what I'm gonna get. A lot of the times I'm in the last few years, I've been in a lot of art spaces that are definitely not made for me. I'm not necessarily supposed to be in these places, and that's very much seen very quickly. Most of the time, I'm the only Native person in a room, and it's changing pretty rapidly, but it's definitely there. I've had a lot of offensive and insensitive language surrounding the way that I look, or inappropriate questions surrounding my identity. I'm sure a lot of you have had that happen in this room. So instead of getting angry, or actually just acknowledging the anger that comes along with that and turning it into something that makes it feel like feel more like I'm embracing a joy in that and kind of shit talking. So what the fuck did you say to me is something that is, I think, a lot of the times, because I do hear bizarre questions, and it's really just something that I was excited about here. So I'm gonna end the presentation of my own work with this because it's really a simple but complex love story between the land and the water, and includes all the elements of the physical and the non-physical world that are existing together in balance, that hold a strong bond with each other and move back and forth quite a bit. You're gonna see the fish as the figure on that side. Looking around her head, you can see killer whale teeth. As I mentioned, I'm killer whale eagle. So again, you're going to see that imagery all throughout my work. And then on that side, that's going to be the forest with more of a form line, trees on the hand, and form line muscles. Those legs are traditional basket designs, which is also pretty fun. And yeah, that was like one of my favorite things. I guess I'll kind of go, I've got like 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna run over some of the artists that I'm inspired by. This specific artist is Alison Bremner. She's a Klingit artist like me. She comes from my community. I'm very much influenced by her work. She's based in Seattle, but she's originally from Yakutat, Alaska. Allison's work combines themes of Tlingit tradition, contemporary art, and humor in ways that create joy and act as a bridge between generations. This work is both a combination of her being a carver. She carved that mask, which is very important because there's not very many female carvers in our community, and that's really something that I would love to see change, and I'd love to see more male carvers bring on female mentors, because that's really the only way that we're gonna preserve that art, is to pass it along to women, in my opinion. And this is also Alison Bremner. This is also, speaking to the exclusion of Northwest Coast art in the canon of great art and mainstream art history. So yeah, she doesn't look that satisfied about things, but it's really, I mean, she carved this mask as well. And then I'm gonna move on to massive thing that she carved, this kuteya, which is a totem pole. Bremner is believed to be the first Tlingit woman to carve and raise a totem pole. This pole was is combining traditional techniques that have been passed down for thousands of years. And she's also including her own voice with the incredible balance of humor and reverence. This is specifically for her grandfather, and you'll usually raise a totem pole in honor of somebody that's passed, or to honor your family. On the bottom part there, that's a thermos, which is really like so precious, but she's honoring the fact that her grandfather loved that thermos. So it's funny, but it's also heavy. I love that. So this is Ursula Hudson, Kadu's name. She is a Tlingit interdisciplinary artist who is well known for her Chilkat and Ravenstail reading styles. She is the daughter of Clarissa Rizal, who is a very renowned weaver. So that influence is going to be pretty strong in Ursula's work. But this specific regalia was made for a child, and it's special in a lot of ways because most of the Chilkat robes you're gonna see have yellow and blue and white. She kind of diverted from that with just a simple black and white. And she's, often expanding the narratives of what Tlingit art should be, or what Chilkats should be, by inserting her own voice and kind of breaking the tradition of things. Again, this is, okay, fine, this is me. But this is woven by Ursula, it is called The Spider Comes In. This is just exploring concepts of deviance and unity through visual and written expressive mediums. So her intricate weaving techniques are very much traditional, and then the concepts behind them are going to be different. In this specific one, this is, I think, a spider, which is not common in, or not found in our creation stories. But it's also exploring the idea that our creation stories aren't the end. The creation stories that are passed down might have lost a spider, because there's spiders everywhere in Alaska. So a lot of traditional people will say that to just follow along with the idea of following your creation stories, but Ursula's opening up that idea of being like, no, it didn't, why aren't there any freaking spiders? Like, they're all over the place. So she's inserting that and showing this, that's the older ways are not the end. The older ways are a map. And then the newer ways are really just the ways of carrying things on in the ways that we have available to us. So I think that's it.